I just self-published my first book. It's a short story collection called Managing and Other Lies. It's available more or less everywhere on Amazon. I'm hoping to self-publish more books, novels, short stories, novellas, poetry, and I learned a lot in the process. So here are all the important things that I learned when self-publishing my first book. Things I did right, things I did wrong, mistakes that I made, things I'd definitely do again, and things I wouldn't. So if you're planning to self-publish your own book, hopefully there are things that you learn in this video that you can take away and use to make your first self-publishing experience as smooth as possible. The very first thing I did, kind of obviously, was make the decision to self-publish my book. There are reasons not to do this and a lot of reasons to do it. As I mentioned in my big announcement video on this book, the real reason I decided to self-publish was because I knew that this book in particular was always going to be a difficult thing to take down the traditional publishing route. This is a 200-page collection of very intense horror stories about being transgender. It's not an easy sell for traditional publishing. And it also has kind of a weird offset structure. The first half of this book is a novella, which by itself is a very hard sell for a first book. And then the second half of the book are 5 very experimental, epistolary short stories. When you're in a situation like this and you know that traditional publishing is quite a tall order for the thing that you've created, self-publishing is a great idea. It's not something I'd really thought of until I had. And I was inspired to finally self-publish my book by a few different sources. And we'll come to one of those sources in a moment. Once you have made the decision to self-publish your work, you have to know how to do it. And that's quite a steep learning curve, so let's walk through it. The very first thing I needed to do was make sure that my manuscript was ready. So I completed it and I put it away. This is something that you hear authors say a lot. Draft, redraft, redraft, and when you think you have something that's roughly a final draft, put it away for a few months. Don't touch it, don't look at it, don't even think about it. When you're ready, pull it out of the drawer, read through it, edit it again, and then it's probably ready. I did this, and yet, when I read through the physical copy once it arrived in the post, I found 2 typos in the final story. The last 10 pages of this book has 2 awful typos in it. And I am furious about that because I'm also a professional freelance editor. I have edited multiple novels for other self-published authors. I'm really good at it. And yet when editing my own work, I missed 2 typos in the final story. I cannot get over that. It will haunt me forever. One of the typos makes me look like an idiot as well. There's a line where a character says, "I didn't close it properly." And instead of properly, it says probably. And I'm guessing what happened is that I wrote properly, slightly misspelled it in my haste, and autocorrect changed it to probably, and now I'm stuck with it. So one big thing that I've learned is that you can never edit enough. And again, I've heard authors talk about this before. When you read through your own works, you will find things you don't like. And that's going to happen no matter how much time you spend editing, unfortunately. I read through this thing as if I was a reader, as if I was reviewing it. And there were so many turns of phrase I didn't like. There were a few awkward repetitions here and there. There's one small segment in a story halfway through where a character smiles and in the next paragraph the other character smiles and I'm like, okay, enough smiling. Could have fixed that. Could have used a thesaurus, could have done something differently, and that's always going to happen. But my point here is when you think you're done editing, you're not. You can keep going. You can read through it again and again and again until you've got it memorized, until you could just recite it on stage. And even then, even when you know it that well, you'll read through it 6 months later, a year later, and you'll cringe at certain things or get annoyed at things you didn't change when you had the chance. You're never done editing. But one of the great things, one of the best things that I learned while self-publishing is the sheer amount of control that you have over your text and over the book itself. You're self-publishing it, so it's up to you how long the book is. It's up to you what kinds of stories you want to write. And it's also up to you what the cover looks like. If you're an artist, make your own cover. I'm not at all. So go digging. There are 2 really great places to find a good cover artist. One is Fiverr. That probably occurred to you immediately. And the other is Instagram. Go on Instagram and search book cover artist. I actually found 2 really cool book cover artists who had designed books that I've read, books that are on these shelves. I looked through their portfolios, I saw some books that I recognized, and I thought, yes, I want you. So I emailed both of them. Their rates were surprisingly manageable. I said that I had a budget of like £500. That felt like the most I could spend on a cover, especially when I didn't know how much the book was going to sell and if I'd ever make that money back. And both of them accepted it. However, they were both busy for months. Neither of them had time to do my cover until 6 months after I wanted it out in the world. I knew that if I found someone who was available now, I could get the book out within a few weeks, and that's exactly what I did. That's a choice I made. You do not have to make that choice. But the artists of books that you see in bookstores often do freelance work. You can find them on Instagram, you can find their portfolios, you can email them. I did that, you can do it too. In the end, I did go with a cover artist that I found on Fiverr. She's a Serbian artist called Katarina Naskovski. I credited her in the book. She's an amazing artist. She charges such a reasonable price. I went for her most premium package because of how affordable it was. And I wanted as much as I could get out of that price. And I had a very specific image in mind. I knew exactly what I wanted my cover to be, and I gave her all the details as I saw them in my mind, and she came up with exactly what I wanted, although arguably better because she's the artist. We had a really decent back and forth conversation about what would work and what wouldn't work, how some of the things I had in mind were just not practical. I had too many thoughts, too many ideas, and it just wouldn't play out how I hoped it would. But it mostly did. I mean, in the end, I'm so happy with the result. It just couldn't be in the exact format or style or arrangement that I wanted, and so you make allowances. And this back and forth conversation with an artist is really fun, really exciting, really satisfying. As I said in my reveal video, I had so many specific things I wanted to achieve with this. This cover is very thematically and politically connected to the themes, the setting, the characters, and the tone of my book. This color scheme was done very specifically. The image of a woman's silhouette with a haunted house inside of it. That is tonally and thematically important to me when it comes to what's in this book. And I got to have this conversation with her explaining all of this, the importance of the ideas that were in my mind and how the cover had to thematically match what I was trying to achieve with this book. And in the end, it did. It does. She understood it. She brought it to life, and that means I get to hold a book that I helped design. A cover that fully expresses everything I wanted it to express. Created by an artist with an enormous amount of passion and talent and empathy for what I wanted. That conversation between writer and artist is a really wonderful thing about self-publishing that I've come to deeply love and respect. I'm already looking forward to asking Katarina to do the cover for my next book. I have a manuscript in the works. I know what I want the cover to look like. I have a title. I know what the font should be, and I know she will deliver it. I can't wait for that day. Hopefully it's not too far away. As I said before, you need to know how to self-publish a book. And you need to make sure your manuscript is as done as you will ever have it be done. Edit it 1,000 times and make sure that there really isn't anything left that you could do to it. Contact a cover designer. Get them to do the art for it. And there's one other person that you need to contact before you do any of the publishing stuff. And that is a person who can format and typeset the manuscript itself. You can't just write this in Microsoft Word or Google Docs and upload it somewhere. It doesn't work. It has to be typeset. It has to be formatted. You have an inside title page. You have a dedication, a table of contents, etc. Someone has to do that for you. Now, in order to figure that out, this is what I did. I personally reached out via Instagram to one of the authors who inspired my choice to self-publish, David Sodergren. David Sodergren has become a legend of independent horror fiction. His books sell a lot. He's very beloved. He's got kind of a cult following. And all of his books are self-published via Amazon. I've been buying his books on Amazon. They're beautiful things. Like me, David Sodergren is based in Scotland and writes horror. So I thought, hey, how does he do this? When I reached out to him, he asked me to be specific. Don't just say, hey, how do I get self-published? Ask very specific questions. And so I did. I had a list of things I wanted to understand very specifically. And one of them was about formatting and typesetting. And he said, well, you have two options. Either you reach out to someone on Fiverr, like I did with my cover, or you do it yourself by buying a special piece of software. There are a few different ones. If you just Google typesetting or book formatting software, you'll get the stuff you need. Some of this software acts like Adobe, where it's an ongoing subscription. I hate that. I pay for Adobe myself. I edit my videos in Adobe. I can't stand this monthly subscription thing, but at least it's tax deductible. As is the work that a professional typesetter does for your book, and so that's what I did. I went back to Fiverr. I looked at all the different options, all the different people that were doing typesetting and book formatting services, and I picked someone. And this turned out to be another difficult lesson. Another thing that I learned the hard way. My book has only just come out, and it's difficult for me to admit that there are 2 typos in it, but it's even more difficult to admit that I'm not entirely happy with the formatting of this book. It's out, it's done, people are buying it, people are reading it, and I'm so grateful. Please keep doing that, I promise. The stories are great, it's just that the formatting isn't exactly what I wanted. When it came to the cover art, Katarina was so open. She asked me lots and lots and lots of questions, and we had a great back and forth dialogue. But the guy who did the formatting, who I won't name, didn't ask me any questions. I sent him the manuscript and he went, "Great, I'll be done in a few days," and off he went. That was it. When I got it back, I had like 100 things that I wanted to fix. So I kept saying to him, "Hey, this isn't quite right. That's not quite, nah, that's not what I want. That's wrong. Can you change?" And it went on and on and on. And eventually I just went, okay, this is good enough. But there are still things that I missed. For example, one of the stories in here is written as a play script. And there are very small passages all the way through this script in each scene that are written in parentheses as notes from the director of the play, who isn't happy with the script. And those bits are in bold, except for the very first one. In scene 1, it's in parentheses, but it's not in bold, and all the other ones are. That bugs me. I didn't catch it. When the guy who formatted my book sent it back to me, I scanned through it and I missed that detail. Another detail is that there are 2 stories in here that are written in traditional prose. And for some reason, there are large gaps between each paragraph. I don't know why. If you have a large paragraph with 10, 20 lines in it, it all looks nice. And then you get a gap. These gaps shouldn't be there. It's normal prose. But they're there, and I have to live with that. These are difficult things I learned in the self-publishing process. If you go through traditional publishing, you have editors and people in the publishing house to do all of this for you, to catch these errors and fix them. And you might not even know they've ever happened. But it was my responsibility as a self-published author to catch this stuff, and I didn't. And honestly, I felt like I was going to be there for weeks fixing all of these things, to the point that I started feeling awkward. Like he was going to turn back to me and say, "Hey, if you've got all these problems with how I did this, why didn't you just do it?" That's what I had in my head. I had a voice telling me that. And so I thought, it's good enough, let's just be done with this and move on. But it means that when I flick through this, there are things that I'm not happy with when it comes to the formatting. So, if you self-publish, and you, like me, are more of a control freak than you realize, which is something I've come to learn about myself in this process, consider getting the software and doing it yourself. I think that's what I'll be doing from now on. But also because I've written a short story collection where each story has a different style to it. One is a series of DMs, one is a play script, one is a journal. Because of that, I knew that there were going to be little difficulties when it came to formatting, because each one demanded a different format. And the guy who did my formatting did a decent job of jumping all those hurdles. It wasn't an easy book to format, I imagine. If you've written a traditional novel in prose, it's a lot easier to format. And there's one more thing that I learned, which is the size of the book. When I'd had my manuscript formatted, and I had the formatted version in my hands, and I had the cover in my hands, and everything was ready to go, I watched a really good, really detailed video tutorial here on YouTube that showed me how to upload to Amazon as a self-published author. The self-publishing tutorial that I watched was by Mandy Lin. She's a self-published author. I found her on YouTube, and I'll link to her video in the description. It was a great tutorial, and it covered literally everything I needed to know. So if you want to know exactly how to upload to Amazon as a self-published author, watch that video. It'll teach you everything. She was a great help. I really appreciate that video. But one thing I didn't know was about the size of the book. See, here's something that I found it difficult to wrangle with. Do I get the cover design done first, or the formatting? In the end, I chose the cover design purely because I wanted to credit my cover artist in the manuscript. So I needed that done first so I could add it to the manuscript and then have it formatted, because once it's formatted, I can't touch it. It's been formatted by someone else. I can't go into that and change things around because it's done. It's like it's been laminated. And that's the sole reason I chose to do cover, then format. But something you really need to know is that a book is of a specific size. As a British person, or I should say as literally anyone from any country that isn't the United States, I use the metric system. But Kindle asks you to use imperial, and this book is 8 inches by 5 inches. 8 long, 5 wide. It's a pretty standard size for a published piece of fiction. I didn't know that, so I didn't mention it to the guy who was formatting my book or the artist. It all got fixed in the end, everything's fine, everything's perfect, but it did cause a headache. What happened was once I uploaded it, the cover was the wrong size, as was the manuscript. So I had to return to these two people whom I had already paid for their work and say, hey, it's not quite right. To reformat the cover to fit the size was gonna take a lot of work, and she charged me an extra fee on top. Completely fair, happy to pay it. Katarina's amazing. The guy who formatted it was good enough to just adjust it for a different size. Very quick, easy job, and I'm grateful to him for not charging any extra to do that. So that's something you need to know, is that the size of the book is really important. So when you approach a formatter and a cover designer, make sure you know what size your book is going to be, and also roughly what the page count is as well. And this is why I do think you need to get your book formatted before you get the cover done, because books have spines, and the spine's thickness is based on how long the book is. My book is 200 pages, so this is the thickness of the spine. But it has to be exact, it has to be precise. So once you get it formatted, you have a precise page number. Like specifically, my book is 208 pages. The page number goes up to 201, but you also have contents and title page and dedication and about the author, etc. 208, that was a really important number. My cover artist did not know that at the time because it hadn't been formatted. Unformatted, it was like 180 or something, but formatted and unformatted are different. It was 180 Google Doc pages. That's not a book. 180 on Google Doc turned into 208. Although, because those two stories have weird gaps between the paragraphs, if those gaps had been closed properly, it would be a little bit shorter. Anyway, that's a lesson I learned. That's the point of this video. I'm not mad, I'm just mad. All of the wrinkles in the size stuff got ironed out, but it did cost me a bit of extra money to get the cover fixed. If I'd used a bit of common sense, I might have realized that I needed to get it formatted first and that I needed to know the size and blah blah blah, but first time. You are here to learn from my mistakes, and I'm also here to learn from my mistakes. Next time I do this, things should go a lot more smoothly. Okay, I'll stop here. This will not be the last time I do a video like this. I really want to guide people to doing self-publishing if that's something you want to do. And I'm going to continue to self-publish my books, I think. There will be things that I write in the future that I think could find a home with an agent or an indie publisher or something. As I've said in other videos, my poetry is getting out there. I'm getting my poetry published in anthologies here and there. In fact, I have a poem getting published in an anthology this month. I've known about that for a while, but what I didn't know was the judge who picked my poem to go in that anthology was Sarah fucking Waters. Sarah Waters read my poem, loved it, and so it gets to go in an anthology. That is amazing. That is wild to me. Sarah Waters. Anyway, I may not self-publish everything I ever do. Like I said, my poetry is not self-published. That's going out here, there, and everywhere. But this collection that I wrote, I knew I needed to self-publish it. I made that choice, and I'm really, really happy I did. And I really hope that I can help you self-publish as well. It's been a wild ride. I'm really looking forward to working with my cover artist again. Next time, I'm probably going to format it myself, and maybe I'll talk you through that process once I've done it. I will continue to make videos about the self-publishing process, and I really hope I can be of help to any budding self-published authors out there. If you do fancy buying a copy of my book, there are links in the description to where you can get it. I love this thing, and when you self-publish your work, you'll feel the same way about yours. Subscribe for books.